Good Wednesday morning, everyone. Welcome back to Weather on the Go, all your weather coverage. In today's weather forecast, I will be providing you with my February forecast with the La Nina update. Are we trending out of La Nina? I'll answer those questions, as well as provide you with a February outlook for 2023 with weekly temperature and precipitation trends, and then my official February forecast of 2023 with temperatures, precipitation, and my overall February outlook at the end of this video. If you guys are here with me this morning, press the subscribe button down below to get all of my daily weather forecast updates on this channel each and every morning at 9 a.m. You can press the like button down below. That's the thumbs up button here to get all of this weather information you're about to see out to more and more people on YouTube. We're up over 20,000 subscribers. My goal is 25,000. So each and every one of you, please hit the subscribe button down below, and the like button is that thumbs up button down below the video. It definitely helps more than you can think of. But yeah, looking here down below at the index, we are still in a La Nina as we speak, at least a weak La Nina, and we've been trending around a weak to moderate La Nina going all the way back into early November and even late October, back towards Halloween. And looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies here across the equatorial Pacific here this morning, you can see those bluer shaded colors here. That indicates the classic La Nina that we're seeing just to the west of South America here, and then near Hawaii and farther north, we see these oranger anomalies. That is warmer sea surface temperatures to the north of Hawaii up here into the northern Pacific Ocean. So classic La Nina type of setup here. But going back over the past 7 days with the sea surface temperature change, we do see that the La Nina is starting to lose its battle down here into the equatorial Pacific Ocean here. We see those oranges colors starting to take over a little bit more and more each and every day, and that does mean we're going to see less blue shaded colors down here, and eventually the La Nina will start to lose its battle across the equatorial Pacific as we go into late February, and I think into early spring, into March, as we move forward. And it does agree that a lot of the consolidation of the climate models that we see on here are trending towards neutral conditions. That is at zero. And then, of course, getting into positive territory, that is El Nino status. So it does look like we trend weaker with the La Nina going through February, possibly into early March, and then we trend back into neutral conditions sometime into March and April, and then possibly even into a weak El Nino moving into the summer of 2023. But again, that's a little ways down the road. It does look like we trend back toward neutral at least going into early this spring. So looking at what the La Nina winters are like, again, we're still in the winter time frame. We still have to look at this. It's very relevant this time of year still. We have the polar jet stream up and over portions of the Aleutian Islands, bringing down all that Arctic air from portions of Siberia, sometimes down into the southern Canada, sometimes even further south into the United States. Wetter conditions with that Pacific jet stream sometimes across the Pacific Northwest, across portions of British Columbia, getting into Washington State, Oregon State there in Northern California. Drier conditions usually prevail across the Southwest, and then where those jet streams phase together, the Pacific jet stream and also the polar jet from the north, we see wetter conditions and warmer conditions overall across most of the eastern 2/3 of the United States in any given La Nina pattern. So looking at the monthly mean surface temperature here, this is climatology back into the late 1900s. It is very relevant to this day because you do see farther to the north, these colder temperature anomalies are showing up usually in February across the upper Midwest, the northern plains, and parts of the Northeast, and generally speaking across the lower 48 here, especially across the central Gulf Coast states. Getting in towards Southern California, Arizona, Texas, and Florida, all these areas are usually a lot warmer going through February. And going into the precipitation output with this, the monthly mean precipitation through February, usually you see a lot of wetter conditions across the West Coast, especially the Pacific Northwest here from Washington State down through Oregon, Northern and Central California at times. And then it really goes along with what we've been seeing lately with a lot of heavy rain and severe weather across the Central Gulf Gulf Coast into the southeast, I do think that February will be wet as well, again, across the Ohio Valley, the southeast, and the central Gulf Coast states, with more heavy rain and possibly severe weather, potentially at least looking at climatology going through the month of February. So let's take this a step further and show you the temperature anomalies through this first week in February. Starting today, going through February 7th, you see those colder anomalies showing up from Texas through the Arklatex and into the Ohio Valley. That is in conjunction with a lot of unsettled weather. You see a lot of these bluer anomalies sometimes with unsettled weather. We're seeing that ice storm down across these areas. Over top of that, we have some warmer than normal conditions, but not overly so. It's still pretty cold up here into the upper Midwest and southwestern Canada. Looking at the precipitation anomaly through this week, going all the way through February 7th, you can see that ice storm prevailing down across Texas, getting in through the Arklatex region and the mid-Mississippi Valley. But over top of that, very dry, because that subtropical jet is very active. That polar jet is shut off for the time being going through the February 7th timeframe. So a lot of the west, a lot of the northern plains, the Midwest and Northeast is really just shut off much of precipitation through this coming week. And it does look like the storm track going through this week will really remain down across the southeast here with that active subtropical jet. We could have some colder rains, maybe some ice down here across the Arklatex, getting into the mid-Atlantic at times. Some thunderstorms occasionally down into the southeast, especially into Florida. And then drier weather with some mixed sunshine at times across the Pacific Northwest and the northwestern United States going through today and all the way through February 7th. Now looking further into the second week in February, we have the warmer temperatures coming back across the eastern two-thirds of the country, especially getting even up here into southeastern Canada. Warmer anomalies showing up, 10, 15 degrees above normal for that time of year going into the second week in February. And then we'll flip the script. We'll see colder temperature anomalies across the Pacific Southwest and the West Coast. And we're still going to see dry conditions across the West Coast, primarily across California, Oregon, Washington during the second week in February. A very active go of it across portions of the Arklatex, getting in through the Tennessee Valley and the Mid-Atlantic. An active storm track could be setting up here with the main storm track here with the Texas hook type of low pressure systems possibly developing, where we have the low pressure developing on the lee side of the Rockies and then moving down in toward the Amarillo area into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles, and then hooking their way up the northwest and towards the Ohio Valley and the central Great Lakes with snow on the northwestern side of these lows. You have the colder rains across the northeast and the mid-Atlantic, and then the storms and possibly heavy rain and severe weather across the southeast with this type of setup and storm track. And then again, across the west, we're going to see a lot of drier conditions with the shut off of that polar jet. So it's going to be mainly the subtropical jet. These southern stream storms are going to win out going into the second week in February. Now moving into the third week in February. Now we're around the middle of the month here from February 14th through the 21st, still prevailing the warmer conditions across the eastern two-thirds of the country, really to the east of the Rockies. Along and west of the Rockies, especially getting up into western Canada, we're going to be a lot colder than normal. Temperature anomalies could be 10, 20 degrees at times below normal across some of these areas. And again, very active across the southeast here in the eastern two-thirds of the country with the storm track. Some drier weather across central and western Texas and also Florida as well. There could be some snowfall and maybe some rainfall and some precipitation back across the west at times, especially into the higher elevations going into the third week in February. And again, a very similar storm track. These Texas hook type of low pressure systems that develop on the lee side of the Rockies move down into the Texas and Oklahoma panhandles, potentially farther south this time into central Texas, and then hooking their way up to the northwest towards portions here into the Ohio Valley and getting in towards the central Great Lakes as well, with colder rains across the East Coast, including the I-95 corridor with those warmer temperature anomalies. We're not going to see a lot of snow during that third week in February. A lot of the snow will be falling on the western and northwestern side of these lows across the upper Midwest, the northern plains, and even some mountain snow out west here as well, including the Sierra Nevadas during this time frame. And now getting into the final week in February, February 21st through February 28th here to close out the month. There are some changes. We'll start to dampen this ridge a little bit farther south. We're going to see more of the warmer air spreading down into Texas and the southeast here. It won't be as warm across the northeast getting into the last week in February. We're going to see another Arctic blast start to take shape across western and central Canada, and some of this could be bleeding down into the northern plains and upper Midwest to close out February. And again, a very active storm track here. We're going to have a couple separate storm tracks, I do think, toward the end of February with Clipper type systems, some more Alberta Clippers around that polar vortex and around that Arctic blast across the Pacific Northwest, the northern plains and upper Midwest, and then some southern stream storms from Texas on up through portions of the Ohio Valley, mid-Atlantic. We could be opening up for some active weather there. But again, across portions of the Gulf Coast into Texas here, southern portions of California and the Four Corners regions, we'll see drier conditions here, and that extends over into Florida as well. And again, a couple different storm tracks. I think the main storm track will win out with the southern stream storms down here across Texas, moving up through the mid-Atlantic and the northeast. Cold rains again across the East Coast, especially the I-95 corridor. We may have to watch for some icing if we have enough cold air moving in towards the northeast at times, but it looks like the main ice threat with this could be across, again, those same areas seeing ice now across portions of the southern plains into the mid-Mississippi Valley. Snowfall to the north here with potentially a secondary track across portions of the northern U.S. with these Alberta Clippers that could be moving down across the northern United States with some snow there. A few inches could be coming across those areas during the last week in February. If that storm track sets up, and then maybe some mountain snow across the Sierra Nevadas and much of the western Colorado Rockies getting in toward that last week in February. This is NOAA's temperature outlook here from the Climate Prediction Center going through February. It does look predominantly warmer across the eastern two-thirds of the country. Equal chances of above or below normal temperatures across the middle of the country centered on the Great Plains, and then below normal temperatures likely across much of the west, especially the west coast, going through February. That is their forecast. And then going through the NOAA's precipitation outlook from the Climate Prediction Center, forecasting above normal precipitation across the Pacific Northwest, parts of the upper Midwest and northern plains. And then an active southern stream jet will actually activate a lot of above normal precipitation, likely across portions of the Ohio Valley and much of the eastern two-thirds of the country during this time. Drier across southern Florida and southern portions of the Four Corners region through the month of February. Now, this is my temperature forecast for February. I do think we're going to see a lot of below normal temperatures across the Pacific Northwest, especially into portions of Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, and up here into Montana, with that Arctic blast pushing farther southeast late February, especially. Around average here across the Four Corners, getting up through the Great Plains. I think it's going to be a pretty average February with temperatures above normal across most, if not all, of the eastern two-thirds of the country, and then well above normal or much above normal across portions of the northeast, the mid-Atlantic, and the southeast through the month of February. That is my official forecast for temperatures. Looking at my February precipitation forecast here, above normal, above average precipitation across the Pacific Northwest. Some of these Clipper systems diving down could be bringing some rain or snow. Below average across southern California, southern Nevada, and parts of Arizona. That subtropical jet will go even farther south here into northern Mexico, so I think we will miss out on a lot of the precipitation here. Around average around the Rockies, getting up into the northern plains, and then we'll have above average precipitation across most of the eastern two-thirds of the country, especially here from the Rockies on eastward. Much above average precipitation across interior New England, the Ohio and Tennessee river valleys, and then down here toward the Red River into Texas through the month of February. Now, putting together my official February forecast here, I think across the Pacific Northwest, we're going to see lots of rain to start February, and then as it turns colder, we'll see more snow, and then we'll see the drought build across California again, southern Nevada, getting into Utah here, western Colorado, and much of Arizona with the drier conditions. With that subtropical jet turning a little bit farther south, we're going to miss out on a lot of the precipitation, I think, through the month of February here. Across the north, especially in the Dakotas, getting into the upper Midwest and parts of the Great Lakes, and then sometimes maybe getting into the western Ohio Valley, we'll have an Arctic blast that will return. But I think this will return late February. I think we'll start off warm, and then we'll turn very cold toward the end of the month. So definitely be watching out for an Arctic blast late in February up here. Cold late. I think it'll be cold late as well, with snow across the central and southern plains into the Arklatex regions. I think, again, it'll be warm to start the first half of the month, and then it will turn very much colder and more snowier toward the end of the month down here. Occasional rain and storms, maybe some severe weather at times across portions of New Mexico, Texas, and getting in towards the coastal portions of the Gulf of Mexico as we get through February, especially early on in the month. And then we'll have some snow up here in the interior New England, especially Maine, getting into northern Vermont, northern New Hampshire, and upstate New York. Rain, go away. Yes, it's going to be very warm across the eastern two-thirds of the country, so lots of rainy conditions from the I-95 corridor southward towards portions of West Virginia, the Carolinas, and Georgia, and then drier conditions here across most of Florida, especially central and southern Florida, as we go through the month of February. So to recap my weather forecast, I did provide you with the La Nina update. We are trending towards neutral conditions here towards early spring. I provided you with my February outlook here with weekly temperature and precipitation trends. Also, my official February forecast with temperatures, precipitation, and my overall outlook of how February looks to play out throughout the month. So thank you guys so much for watching. I definitely appreciate it. Remember to like the video down below, press that thumbs up button, leave any comments, questions, and concerns below. I'll get to those later on today. Subscribe to the YouTube channel if you're new, and hit the notification bell to get all of my daily weather forecast updates on this channel. Have a great Wednesday, everybody, a great rest of your week, and I will see you all in the next video.